Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 578, written by UnusualGoldsmith. I was cast decades back in time. While I experienced a time glitch at work last year in May 2021, it was not my first time-related glitch in the Matrix. My first glitch related to time took place at the library at the University of California, Santa Barbara, during my first year of college. Note, this is a rather detailed composition of my experience. Originally, I had written about it near the time of the event in an email before forwarding it across several email accounts, then finally transferring the story to my long-defunct online journal. Rest in peace, Zanga, and the blog section of MySpace. I finally decided to share this publicly, with a few present-day details. I attended UCSB from 2000 to 2004. I barely went out in order to not spend any money if possible, and probably used all the credits on my meal plan for the school year. Quick shout out to Ortega Dining Commons for the takeout meals that sustained me during some all-night cramming sessions. As a bookish student, I spent a lot of time at Davidson Library in my freshman year, choosing the floor I would study at with no rhyme or reason. By the end of the school year, I could honestly say that I have studied on each floor of the library at least once, including inside the spectacular Pacific View room on the 8th floor. Halfway into the first quarter of the school year, in the middle of October 2000, I began preparing for my midterms. I was not the type of person who could study at home, treating my dorm room at Santa Rosa Residence Hall as my bedroom and nothing else. The glitch took place after I had taken half of my midterms. I had taken 2 of my midterms in as many days so far, and met up with my roommate at Ortega for lunch at around noon. Afterward, we parted ways as he headed for the University Center, UCEN, to start his shift at the bookstore, thanks to a work-study program, while I headed for Davidson Library. I entered the library through the Davidson entrance since, at the time, it was the main entrance to the library, showing my age as major renovations saw the construction of a new library entrance and wing a decade after I graduated and left the school. I headed for the Ocean Elevators, a set of 3 elevators with access to all 8 floors of the library tower, and pressed the up button. The middle elevator opened immediately. I stepped inside, turned around, and pressed the button for the 8th floor. After a short wait, the elevator doors closed, and I went up to the 8th floor alone without stopping on any of the floors in between. When the elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, I stepped outside the elevator, took 2 steps, and abruptly stopped in my tracks. I was surrounded by the exposed concrete floor slab, save for the elevated tile flooring I was standing on directly in front of the elevator. There was construction equipment and bags of masonry material everywhere, but there were no walls or windows to speak of. Undoubtedly, the place I ended up in was under construction and open to the elements. I went back inside the elevator to see which floor I was on, and the LED panel showed a number 8 with a down arrow. Tentatively, I went back outside and walked straight from the elevator due west towards the edge of the apparent construction area. In the distance, I saw the setting sun slowly dipping below the horizon of the Pacific Ocean. If you go to the beach to watch the sunset at UCSB, over the course of the year, you'll see that thanks to the tilt of the Earth, the sun sets over the Pacific Ocean during the colder winter months and over the California mainland during the warmer spring and summer months. Seeing the sunset caught me off guard almost right away, since it was not supposed to occur for several more hours. After all, my roommate and I had left the dining commons together at about 5 minutes before 1 p.m. so that he wouldn't be late for work. I was further shocked by something else I saw, or rather didn't see. I looked down at the UCEN by the campus lagoon, and Stork Tower was not there. I mean, there is no way anyone on campus could overlook a bell and clock tower that stands at 175 feet or 53 meters. Let alone from the vantage point of the 8th floor of the library. I turned to my right, looking due north, and I saw the peaks of the Santa Ynez Mountains covered in snow. As far as I knew, no precipitation of any kind had yet fallen in the Santa Barbara area since the beginning of the school year. never mind any rain in the local beach areas and especially not any snow in the local mountains. While I stared at the snow-covered mountains, a small plane emerged from just below my field of vision and gained altitude, apparently taking off from the local airport. After the plane disappeared from sight, I looked down and saw the rooftop of the original 2-story library, adjacent to the library tower. I did an about-face and looked due south towards the Pacific Ocean. In the distance, I saw Santa Cruz Island of the Channel Islands archipelago just off the coast. When I looked down, I was stunned to find that the 4-story wing built just south of the library tower was missing. In its place were far more bicycle racks than I remember seeing previously, as these bike racks extended from the bike path to the edge of the library tower. By the way, I had only been on the 8th floor for about 2 minutes or so I was somewhat surprised when I saw that the doors of the elevator I took were still open as I turned around. While taking all of this in, I snapped back to my purpose of being there at the library in the first place, and promptly headed due east, behind the elevators, where the Pacific View room should have been. Unfortunately, this area was also under construction. I looked over this edge of the concrete floor slab and saw Webb Hall below. Given the distance between the library and Webb Hall, another building could very well fit in the open space. I looked up and in the distance saw the Mesa, an expansive neighborhood in the city of Santa Barbara. UCSB is technically in the city of Goleta, but that's a story for another time. The neighborhood diverted my attention for something I was not expecting to see: streetlights. The apparent sunset meant that streetlights were slowly turning on throughout the city as it became evening. I was not going to get caught in the darkness of an apparently unfinished library floor that did not have electricity or lights, nor did I want to stick around in a place and time that was very different from the one I came from. I headed for the very elevator I took, since its doors were still open, and pressed the 1 button. The doors promptly closed and I headed back downstairs. As I made my way down, I had come to the disconcerting conclusion that some way, somehow, I went back in time. It wasn't just an abrupt change in time of day either. I briefly ended up in the past when the library tower was still under construction, while Stork Tower and the 4-story wing of the library did not yet exist. When I reached the first floor, I stepped outside the elevator and looked to my right. I saw the long passageway connecting the library tower to the original library. Adjacent to the elevators were several payphones as well as a dorm phone. My roommate and I opted not to get a landline for our dorm since we had cell phones anyway. I turned to my left and walked towards the entrance I had just walked through mere minutes ago. To my enormous relief, I saw the current serials section, which houses printed magazines, journals, and newspapers, and is located on the lower level of the first floor of the 4-story wing. Next to the entrance of this section is a staircase leading to the ethnic and gender studies section on the 2nd floor of the same wing. There were lots of people on the staircase going in both directions as I headed for the exit. I looked through the glass doors and realized that not only was I back in the present time, but also the same time of day as when I arrived there just 5 minutes ago. As I stepped outside of the library, soaring between Gervitz Hall and the music library was Stork Tower. I walked towards the tower and paused upon arriving at the entrance of the music library. I continued looking up at Stork Tower, still pondering what I had seen while up in the library tower. I went inside the USEN, found a table outside a cafe, and studied for my 3rd midterm until 5 p.m. when my roommate got off work at the bookstore. He was surprised to see me, of course. Over dinner back at Ortega, I told him everything that I experienced just after lunch that day. He was skeptical, but he ultimately believed me, especially because he felt that my earnest recollection of that day's events over the years, we still keep in touch to this day, was the only time he sensed fear in me. This was the one and only such event I ever experienced during my time at UCSB. I've been to the 8th floor of the library tower countless times since I graduated, but I never went back in time again. I've taken my roommate and our friends there. I took my family there when my sister was exploring colleges. My sister ended up going to UCSC. She'd rather be a banana slug than a guaco. I've taken classmates and even a girlfriend there. Sadly, I was not able to replicate my experience of going back in time with any of them. During the elevator rides to the 8th floor, I would secretly hope that the doors would open to a construction site with random but prominent features from the university skyline missing in all directions, only to be disappointed upon seeing the scale model of the university as soon as the elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, and ultimately, a long ago fully built library floor with a spectacular view of the Pacific Ocean each and every time. Case notes. File number 578. It's always elevators, isn't it, where these weird time anomalies happen. I recall a story I read quite a while ago, maybe a year ago now. It was this child that took an elevator, got off on a floor, and found that it was in the far past. She went to the room her parents had booked, and it was just an old lady there. They even had the cops come, and the cameras confirmed that she never got off on the floor, at least in her timeline. She just didn't exist for those moments in current time, much like in your case. For those few minutes you spent in the past, you truly didn't exist in the current time. The striking question to ponder is, if you took any action while in the past, would it affect your current timeline? This is of course where time paradoxes emerge. Likely no, you'd have been in a parallel universe, in the past of that universe. But then, when you return to your normal timeline, were you still in that universe's current timeline, or did you go back to your original? And what's the catalyst? Why does it happen so frequently with elevators? And who's facilitating these transfers? It doesn't strike me as a natural force of the universe. It strikes me as something requiring deliberate input from an entity beyond the 4 dimensions we occupy. Call this God or angels, server developers, whatever you want. I don't think this is happening at random. And I don't think it's just a force of the universe. Because by definition, this is exceeding the bounds of the universe.